The sky tore open above New Shanghai as Commander Elara Vex ducked beneath the crumbling remains of what had once been a quantum communication tower. A blinding flash of purple-white energy sliced through the atmosphere, vaporizing 3 Terran destroyers before they could activate their phase shields. "Bravo Squadron, report," she shouted into her neural comm, brushing debris from her exo-armor. Static answered, punctuated by screams and fragmented transmissions. The Vrex invasion had begun 6 hours ago. Humanity was losing badly. Elara's tactical display flickered inside her helmet, showing the remaining human resistance points scattered across the megalopolis. Red markers blinked out one by one as the alien motherships methodically erased centuries of human achievement. The taste of copper filled her mouth. She'd bitten her lip hard enough to draw blood. "Commander, we've got a live one." Lieutenant Santos emerged from the smoke, dragging a wounded Vrex soldier. The alien's chitinous exoskeleton was cracked, revealing pulsing blue tissue beneath. Its 4 eyes tracked Elara's movements with predatory precision. "Hold it down," Elara ordered, retrieving the xenotranslator from her utility belt. If they could interrogate it, maybe, just maybe, they could find a weakness in the Vrex battle strategy. The aliens had appeared without warning 3 days ago, their massive ships materializing through tears in space-time above Earth's major cities. The Vrex soldier clicked and hissed as Elara placed the translator against its breathing membrane. "Your resistance is meaningless," it transmitted in flat, synthetic speech. "We are but the first wave. The collapse approaches." Before Elara could demand clarification, the ground beneath them shuddered. A massive Vrex harvester ship descended through the clouds, its underside opening like the maw of some primordial beast. The gravitational distortion it generated was already pulling debris upward. "They're not here to conquer," Elara realized with sudden, terrible clarity. "They're strip mining the planet." As if confirming her assessment, the harvester activated its primary extraction beam, and New Shanghai began to disintegrate. Dr. Malcolm Chun hadn't slept in 72 hours. His eyes burned as he stared at the quantum encryption codes scrolling across his display. Beneath the Himalayan mountains, in humanity's most secure research facility, he was about to attempt the impossible. "Final systems check," he announced to the haggard science team. The Lazarus Project had been theoretical until the Vrex arrived. Now it was humanity's last, desperate gambit. "Temporal stabilizers at maximum. Quantum field integrity at 93% and holding," replied Dr. Samir Nazari, her voice steady despite the tremors that periodically shook the facility. Above them, the battle for Tibet was being systematically lost. Malcolm nodded, placing his palm on the biometric scanner. Initiating Lazarus Protocol. The massive ring-shaped accelerator that dominated the center of the chamber began to hum, supercooled particles racing along its circumference. In theory, it would create a stable wormhole, not through space, but through time itself. "Sir," one of the younger technicians looked up from his console, face pale. "We're getting reports that Paris and Sydney are gone. Completely harvested." Malcolm closed his eyes briefly. His family had been in Sydney when communications went dark. "Continue the sequence," he said quietly. The accelerator's hum became a scream as reality itself protested against their manipulation. A shimmering disk of energy formed within the ring, neither completely solid nor entirely ethereal. "Portal stabilized," Samira announced. "But we've got company. Vrex shock troops have breached the upper levels." Malcolm grabbed the quantum data core, a small, innocuous device containing everything they knew about the Vrex, along with the complete schematics for the Lazarus Project. "Who's the pilot?" Captain Arjun Mehta stepped forward, already dressed in the experimental chronosuit. "I am, sir." "You understand the mission? Find Commander Vex before the invasion begins. Give her this." Malcolm handed over the data core. "It's a one-way trip, Captain." Arjun nodded grimly. "If I succeed, none of this will have happened anyway." The facility shook violently as Vrex weaponry breached the outer defenses. Klaxons wailed as emergency systems failed one by one. "Go!" Malcolm shouted as the blast doors at the far end of the lab began to glow red from Vrex cutting tools. Arjun stepped toward the portal and hesitated, looking back at the scientist who would almost certainly die moments after his departure. "The future is in your hands now," Samir said softly. Captain Meta saluted, turned, and stepped through the shimmering gateway, vanishing in a flash of light just as the blast doors gave way and the first Vrex soldiers poured into the lab. 3 days before the sky would tear open above New Shanghai, Commander Elara Vex stood on the observation deck of the orbiting Terran Defense Platform Sentinel-7, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath her. The megalopolis sprawl of New Shanghai glittered like scattered diamonds as it passed into night. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Admiral Zhou stepped beside her, hands clasped behind his back. "Hard to believe we almost destroyed it all during the resource wars." Elara nodded. Humanity had nearly exterminated itself 50 years ago before finally unifying under the Terran Accord. Now, with quantum technology revolutionizing everything from energy production to deep space exploration, a new golden age seemed within reach. The Artemis colony on Mars sent their quarterly report, Zhou continued. "They've achieved agricultural self-sufficiency. That's one less supply run for my team," Elara replied, though her thoughts were elsewhere. For weeks, she'd been plagued by vivid nightmares. Visions of Earth's cities in flames, of strange ships descending from tiers in the sky. The station's medical AI had found nothing physiologically wrong, attributing her disturbed sleep to stress. A flash of movement caught her eye. A maintenance drone outside the viewport, performing routine hull inspections. Something about its rhythmic pattern triggered another fragment of her recurring dream. Chitinous creatures moving with mechanical precision, dismantling human structures piece by piece. The station's alarm suddenly blared, shocking Elara from her thoughts. "Unidentified spatial anomaly detected in Sector 7, announced the station's AI. "Unknown energy signature." Zhou was already moving toward the command center, Elara on his heels. The station's crew scrambled to battle stations, even though there hadn't been an actual combat alert in over a decade. On the main display, a swirling distortion had appeared less than a kilometer from the station. It pulsed with energy readings that made no sense according to the confused technicians. "Is it a ship?" Zhou demanded. "Negative, sir. I don't know what it is." As they watched, the distortion stabilized into what appeared to be a hole in space itself. A figure emerged, a human in what looked like experimental military gear, and then the portal collapsed. "Tractor beam," Zhou ordered. "Bring him in. Full quarantine protocols." 30 minutes later, Elara stood outside the quarantine chamber, watching the unconscious figure through the transparent barrier. The medical team had confirmed it was a human male, though his gear was unlike any Elara had seen before. "He's coming around," the medical officer reported. The man's eyes fluttered open. When he saw Elara, he bolted upright with such urgency that the medical staff stepped back in alarm. "Commander Vex," he gasped, his voice hoarse. "Thank God, they haven't arrived yet." "Who hasn't arrived?" Elara asked, unnerved that the stranger knew her name. The man pressed his palm against the barrier. "My name is Captain Arjun Mehta. I'm from 3 days in your future, and I've come to prevent the end of the world." "You expect us to believe this?" Admiral Zhou's face was thunderous as he paced the secure conference room. On the table between them lay Captain Mehta's strange equipment, including the data core he claimed contained humanity's salvation. "Sir, with respect, we don't have time for skepticism," Mehta replied, his eyes never leaving Elara. "In less than 72 hours, an alien species called the Vrex will arrive through artificial wormholes above 7 major cities. They will destroy our defenses and begin harvesting Earth for resources. Billions will die." Elara felt cold. The details he described matched her nightmares with unnerving precision. "And you claim to be from this future?" Zhou's tone made his disbelief clear. "A future that no longer exists the moment I arrived here," Mehta said. "Dr. Chun, the scientist who sent me back, called it the Cassandra paradox. Once the warning is delivered, the timeline splits. The station's science officer, Dr. Li Wei, had been examining the data core. "Admiral, I can't identify the technology in this device, but it's decades beyond our current capabilities, and it's giving off quantum signatures I've never seen before." Zhou hesitated, torn between his instinctive suspicion and the evidence before him. "Let me see it," Elara said suddenly. Dr. Li Wei placed the small, cylindrical device in her hand. The moment her fingers closed around it, a holographic interface sprang to life, scanning her retinas. Genetic and biometric identification confirmed. Commander Elara Vex announced a synthetic voice, initiating targeted data packet. A stream of information flooded directly into Elara's neural implant. Tactical assessments, Vrex biological weaknesses, weapon schematics, and most chillingly, footage of Earth cities being systematically disintegrated by massive harvester ships. She gasped, stumbling backward as the neural download completed. "It's true," she whispered. "All of it." Zhou stared at her. "Elara, the data was keyed specifically to my neural pattern," she explained, her mind racing to process everything she'd just received. "It couldn't have been fate." She turned to Meta. "The Lazarus Project didn't just send you back with a warning. They sent weapon specs, defensive strategies." Meta nodded grimly. "Mankind's last gift to itself. A fighting chance." Elara straightened, decision made. "Admiral, we need to implement Directive Omega immediately. Full planetary mobilization. On the word of a man who claims to be from the future." Zhou demanded. "No," Elara replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "On my word as your commander of special operations. The Vrex are coming, and we have less than 3 days to prepare for the fight of our lives." While humanity mobilized on Earth, deep in the Vrex harvester flagship Eternal Hunger, Supreme Extractor Kizilakith moved through pulsing organic corridors toward the sacred chamber. The chittering of 10,000 warrior drones echoed through the vast ship as they prepared for the coming harvest. "The calculations are precise?" Kizilakith asked the science priest who floated alongside, its translucent appendages rippling with bioluminescent patterns. "Yes, Supreme Extractor. This world contains sufficient quantum-active materials to sustain the brood worlds for precisely 7.4 cycles. The indigenous species possesses rudimentary quantum technology, but lacks the advancement to pose significant resistance." Kizilakith clicked approval with its primary mandibles. "And the collapse?" "The temporal mathematics remain unchanged. The multiversal entropy cascade will reach this sector in 19 cycles. Our harvesting operation will be completed with sufficient time to retreat beyond the event horizon." They entered the sacred chamber, where the Time Seer hovered in its nutrient bath. The ancient Vrex had long ago sacrificed its physical form to become a biological quantum computer, capable of calculating and perceiving the complex mathematics of time itself. "Great Seer," Kizilakith addressed the pulsing mass. "We approach the harvest world. Are there complications we must prepare for?" The Time Seer's thoughts entered Kizilakith's mind directly. "A disturbance in the probability matrix. A temporal anomaly has been detected." The Supreme Extractor froze. "Explain." "A transmission from a future that no longer exists. The prey has been warned." "Impossible," the science priest chittered in alarm. "The indigenous species lacks temporal technology. The future we created for them contained desperate innovation," the Time Seer responded. "They've sent knowledge back, creating a branch. The timeline is now uncertain." Kizilakith's compound eyes narrowed. "Will this affect the harvest?" "They will resist. They have knowledge of our weaknesses now. The probability of complete harvest success has decreased from 98.7% to 76.3%. The Supreme Extractor considered this. Even with forewarning, the humans could not possibly develop sufficient technology to truly threaten the Vrex within mere days. "We proceed as planned," Kizilakith decided, "but we will emerge from the void tiers simultaneously at all target locations. No sequential attack. Maximum force. There is another variable, the Time Seer added, the human female called Vex. In all probable timelines where harvest fails, she is the catalyst. Cassandra's exoskeleton rippled with determination. Then she will be the first to die. 48 hours after Captain Meta's arrival, Earth had transformed. Civilian populations were evacuating from major cities into underground shelters originally built during the Resource Wars. Military units from every nation were deploying under a unified command structure for the first time in history. And in orbit, the combined might of humanity's space forces gathered in defensive formations around the predicted emergence points of the Vrex wormholes. On the command deck of the hastily retrofitted battlecruiser Defiance, Elara studied tactical projections alongside Admiral Zhou and representatives from Earth's other major powers. The modified phase shields should provide some protection against their primary weapons, she explained, pointing to the defensive matrix surrounding New Shanghai. But they're still more advanced than we are. This won't be a conventional war. It'll be asymmetric from the start. What about the prototype? General Chandra of the Pan-Asian Alliance asked. Elara nodded to Dr. Li Wei, who activated a holographic display showing a massive orbital weapon. We're calling it the Harbinger. Based on the schematics from the Future Data Core, it's designed to disrupt the specific quantum frequencies the Vrex use for their wormhole technology. If it works, we can prevent some of their ships from arriving, or even cut off their retreat. If it works, Zhou emphasized, we're building technology we barely understand in a fraction of the time it should take. We don't have a choice, Elara replied simply. The tactical officer's voice cut through their discussion. Commanders, we're detecting gravitational anomalies at all 7 predicted locations simultaneously. Elara's blood ran cold. According to Meta, the Vrex had attacked sequentially in the original timeline, giving Earth forces precious hours to adapt between assaults. A simultaneous attack changed everything. They know, she realized aloud. Somehow, they know we were warned. All ships, battle stations. Zhou ordered. Civilian evacuations? Still at 70% completion, an officer reported grimly. The main view screen showed real-time feed from around the planet as space itself began to tear open. Massive, organic-looking ships began to emerge. Dozens of them, far more than the data core had predicted. Harbinger status? Elara demanded. 93% operational, Commander, but we haven't completed the targeting algorithms. The first Vrex vessels fully materialized and immediately opened fire. Orbital defense platforms above Lagos and New Shanghai disintegrated under the alien onslaught. Launch the Harbinger, Elara ordered. I'll pilot it myself. Zhou grabbed her arm. That's a suicide mission, Commander. The targeting system needs a human operator to identify the quantum signatures in real time, she replied, pulling free. And according to the future data, I'm the only one who can do it. As if to punctuate her words, a blinding flash signaled the destruction of 3 Terran cruisers. Earth defenses were already beginning to crumble. You have command of the fleet, Admiral, Elara said, already moving toward the launch bay. Buy me enough time to get the Harbinger online. Elara, Zhou called after her. When she turned, he saluted formally. Humanity stands with you. 20 minutes later, Elara strapped herself into the Harbinger's control interface. The experimental weapon was essentially a quantum disruptor mounted on a minimalist spacecraft, all power systems devoted to a single purpose. Neural interface online, she announced as the launch sequence initiated. Harbinger deploying. The craft shot from the Defiance's bay into the chaos of Earth's orbit. All around her, humanity's ships were engaged in desperate combat with the technologically superior Vrex. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, the Terran forces fought with newfound coordination, implementing tactics developed from knowledge of their own defeats in a future that would never come. As Elara maneuvered toward the largest concentration of Vrex ships, her neural link with the Harbinger deepened. The quantum frequencies became visible to her augmented perception, complex, shifting patterns of energy that connected the Vrex vessels to their home dimension. Target acquired, she transmitted, initiating primary sequence. The Harbinger's massive disruptor began to charge, drawing power from the craft's experimental zero-point energy core. Elara felt the building resonance through her neural connection, a pressure inside her skull that threatened to overwhelm her consciousness. But before she could fire, proximity alarms blared. A Vrex boarding craft had locked onto the Harbinger, its hull already merging with her ship in a grotesque organic fusion. "I have company," Elara reported, drawing her sidearm as the bulkhead behind her began to glow and deform. Continuing with primary mission. The disruptor reached 90% charge as the bulkhead breached and the first Vrex warrior surged through. Elara fired 3 rapid shots, the specialized ammunition developed from Meta's future data, fragmenting the first Vrex warrior's exoskeleton. But 3 more pushed through the breach behind it, their multi-jointed limbs skittering across the Harbinger's deck with unsettling speed. Disruptor at 95%, she reported through gritted teeth, diving behind a conduit housing as alien energy weapons scorched the air where she'd stood. The neural interface continued to flood her mind with quantum data. She could see the wormhole frequencies with perfect clarity now, pulsing like veins of light connecting each Vrex ship. She just needed a few more seconds to complete the targeting. A Vrex warrior leapt toward her position. Elara rolled beneath it, firing upward into its softer underbelly. The creature collapsed, its blue ichor spattering across her armor. The remaining 2 aliens chittered in what might have been anger, flanking her position. Disruptor at maximum charge, the Harbinger's AI announced, ready to fire. Through the viewport, Elara could see Earth's defenders being systematically destroyed. The Defiance was taking heavy fire, its shields failing. Below, the first harvester beams had begun to cut into New Shanghai and Lagos. Initiating quantum disruption, she commanded, diving to avoid another Vrex attack. The Harbinger shuddered as its primary weapon discharged. Not a conventional energy beam, but a ripple in quantum reality itself, targeted precisely at the frequency the Vrex used to maintain their wormholes. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Elara watched through the neural interface as the quantum connections between the Vrex ships began to destabilize. The wormholes that had allowed their arrival started to collapse, their edges becoming unstable. The Vrex warriors attacking her suddenly froze, their compound eyes shifting rapidly. One of them emitted a high-pitched keen that made Elara's implants crackle with interference. "It's working," she transmitted to the fleet. "Their wormhole network is collapsing. They can't bring in reinforcements, and they can't retreat." But the victory was short-lived. The Harbinger's sensors detected a massive energy surge from the largest Vrex vessel, the command ship. A targeted quantum pulse shot toward the Harbinger, a desperate countermeasure. "Brace for impact," Elara shouted, both to the fleet and to herself. The pulse struck the Harbinger with reality-warping force. Alarms blared as systems failed catastrophically. Through the neural interface, Elara experienced the quantum disruption directly in her mind, a sensation like being torn apart and reassembled incorrectly. She screamed as the timeline itself seemed to fracture around her. Images flashed through her consciousness. New Shanghai in flames, the laboratory beneath the Himalayas, Captain Meta stepping through a portal, and strangest of all, herself standing on an alien world facing a massive, pulsating entity she somehow recognized as the Vrex Time Seer. The remaining Vrex warriors on the Harbinger disintegrated, caught in the same quantum feedback loop. The ship's AI voice distorted and died mid-morning. When the chaos subsided, Elara found herself still strapped in the Harbinger's command chair, but the ship was dead around her. Through the viewport, she could see that several Vrex vessels had vanished entirely, while others drifted powerless. But many remained operational, including the massive command ship. "Defiance, do you read me?" she called, tasting blood. No response came through her damaged comms. A new sensation blossomed in her mind, not from the now-defunct neural interface, but something deeper. The quantum pulse had changed her somehow. She could still perceive the quantum frequencies without the Harbinger systems, as if the knowledge had been permanently burned into her her consciousness. And with this new perception came understanding. The Vrex weren't simply conquerors or even resource gatherers. They were refugees fleeing something they called the collapse, a multiversal catastrophe destroying reality itself, universe by universe. Earth wasn't just a resource cache to them. It was one of the last viable worlds before the wave of destruction reached this sector of the multiverse. As this revelation crystallized in her mind, Elara became aware of another presence, a vast, alien consciousness reaching out to her across the quantum frequencies. The Time Seer had found her. You see now, Elara Vex, the thought formed in her mind. The collapse comes for all realities, your world or ours. In the end, entropy claims everything. Why didn't you just ask for help? Elara whispered, though she knew the Time Seer could perceive her thoughts directly. Humanity might have shared our world. Impossible. Your species is chaos incarnate. Unpredictable. Dangerous. Better to harvest your resources for the survival of the many than risk the destruction of all through cooperation with the few. Through the viewport, Elara watched as the remaining Vrex ships renewed their attack on Earth's defenses. The disruption had bought time, but the invasion continued. You have a choice now, the Time Seer continued. Join us. Your mind has been quantum touched. You could help us complete the harvest efficiently, minimizing suffering. Elara's hand moved to the Harbinger's emergency transponder, the only system still functioning. With it, she could transmit everything she now understood about the Vrex and the collapse to Earth's defenders. There's always another way, she replied, both to the Time Seer and to herself. She activated the transponder and began the transmission that would change everything. Armageddon Day +7. That's what they were calling it now, measuring time from the moment the Vrex arrived. Elara stood in the war room beneath the ruins of Geneva, surrounded by the remains of Earth's leadership. Admiral Zhou's face was haggard, aged decades in a week. General Chundra's left arm ended in a medical stasis field where a Vrex energy weapon had severed it. Captain Meta sat silently in the corner, a man displaced not just from his timeline, but from his purpose. The Harbinger transmission changed everything, Dr. Li Wei was explaining, projecting a hologram of the multiverse based on Elara's quantum-enhanced understanding. The collapse is real, a wave of entropy dissolving entire universes. The Vrex are just one step ahead of it. That doesn't excuse genocide, Zhou said sharply. No, Elara agreed, but explains their desperation. The tactical display showed the current situation, a stalemate. The Harbinger's disruption had neutralized approximately 40% of the Vrex fleet, and Earth's defenders had destroyed another 15% in the days since. The remaining Vrex ships had established harvesting operations over 5 major cities, but were proceeding more cautiously now that they couldn't bring reinforcements or retreat. We can't win a war of attrition, Chandra said. Even with their reduced numbers, they're still harvesting faster than we can stop them. We're not trying to win through attrition anymore, Elara replied, stepping forward. Since her exposure to the quantum pulse, her perceptions had expanded in ways she was still struggling to understand. She could see connections between events, probability vectors, and temporal nodes that existed just beneath the surface of reality. The Time Seer is the key, she continued. It's not just their tactical advisor. It's the biological quantum computer that plotted their escape from the collapse. If we can reach it, we might find a solution that doesn't end with either our extinction or theirs. Reach it? Zhou's eyebrows rose. You mean board the Vrex command ship? That's suicide. Not necessarily. Captain Meta spoke up for the first time. The Lazarus Project wasn't just about sending a warning. The chronosuits were originally designed for something else. He looked at Elara meaningfully. Phase shifting, moving slightly out of sync with normal space-time. Dr. Li Wei's eyes widened. Theoretically, that could allow passage through Vrex defenses without detection. We have one prototype left, Meta said. It would have to be a solo mission. All eyes turned to Elara. The Time Seer has already made contact with my mind once, she said quietly. I'm the only logical choice. Zhou looked like he wanted to object, but remained silent. The desperation of their situation was beyond argument. 12 hours later, Elara stood in the laboratory beneath Geneva as technicians made final adjustments to the chrono suit. The sleek, black material hugged her form like a second skin, laced with a network of quantum stabilizers. The suit will keep you phase-shifted for approximately 40 minutes, Dr. Leeway explained. After that, the power cells will be depleted and you'll revert to normal space-time. That should be enough, Elara replied, checking the specialized weapons designed to work while phase-shifted. Captain Meta approached, extending his hand. In my timeline, you died never knowing what hit us. Now you're our last hope. Elara clasped his arm. Different timeline, different outcome. The transport is ready, Joe announced from the doorway. It'll get you within range of the command ship. After that, I improvise, Elara finished with a grim smile. The stealth transport breached Earth's atmosphere under cover of a coordinated attack on the Vrex harvester ships, a desperate diversion to draw attention away from Elara's approach. As they neared the massive Vrex command vessel, she could see it more clearly with her enhanced perception. Not just a ship, but a living organism, pulsing with quantum energies. This is as close as we dare go, the pilot said, bringing the transport to a halt 5 kilometers from the command ship. Any closer and they'll detect us. Elara nodded, moving to the airlock. Remember, no rescue attempts. The mission is everything. Commander, the pilot called as she prepared to step into space. Earth stands with you. The phase shift activated with a sensation like being dunked in ice water. The universe around Elara took on a ghostly, translucent quality as she slipped partially out of normal space-time. Using the suit's propulsion system, she navigated the void toward the Vrex command ship, passing through debris from destroyed vessels, fragments caught between timelines. As she approached the massive alien vessel, she could perceive the quantum frequencies flowing through its organic hull like blood through veins. All led to a central chamber that pulsed with concentrated energy, the Time-Seer's sanctuary. Elara passed through the outer hull as if it were mist, the phase shift allowing her to move undetected through solid matter. Inside, the ship was a nightmarish fusion of technology and biology. Pulsing corridors lined with what appeared to be neural tissue, Vrex drones moving with mechanical precision through chambers filled with harvested Earth resources. Following the quantum signatures, she navigated deeper into the vessel. The chronometer on her suit displays steadily, counting down her remaining time, phase shifted. 32 minutes left. The central chamber was vast, a cathedral-like space dominated by a massive, translucent orb suspended in what appeared to be liquid light. Within the orb floated a being unlike any Vrex Elara had encountered. Ancient beyond measure, its body atrophied into little more than a massive brain connected to the ship's systems by countless pulsing filaments. The Time-Seer, you have come, the thought formed in Elara's mind as she floated at the chamber's edge. As probability suggested you might. You've been expecting me, Elara replied, remaining phase-shifted. All timelines converge on this note. In 63% of probability vectors, you arrive too late. In 28%, you attempt to destroy me. In 9%, we converse as we do now. And what happens in that 9%? The Time-Seer's response came not as words, but as a direct neural download. A cascade of images showing the collapse devouring universe after universe. Reality itself unraveling like fabric torn apart by unseen hands. The wave of destruction was accelerating, approaching this universe faster than the Vrex calculations had predicted. We have 18 standard cycles remaining before annihilation reaches this reality, the Time-Seer explained. Less time than we calculated. The disruption caused by your Harbinger weapon accelerated the decay. Elara felt cold dread settle in her stomach. Are you saying our resistance doomed us? Causality is complex. The seeds of this destruction were planted long before either of our species existed. The multiverse is dying, Commander Vex. The only question is how many can be saved before the end. There must be a solution, Elara insisted, the suit's chronometer showing 25 minutes remaining. Something better than one species harvesting another for survival. The Time-Seer pulsed with what might have been consideration. There is a possibility. one the Vrex High Command rejected as too uncertain. A final option with a 3.27% probability of success. I'm listening. The collapse cannot be stopped, but it can be redirected. With sufficient understanding of quantum temporal mechanics, it would be theoretically possible to create a controlled implosion, a sacrificial universe to act as a firebreak in a multiverse. Elara processed this. You're talking about intentionally destroying an entire universe to save the others. Precisely, but not a populated one. We would need to create an artificial pocket universe, a quantum construct with sufficient mass to draw the entropy wave into itself, then collapse in a controlled manner to seal the breach. Is that even possible? Not with Vrex technology alone. We lack the specific quantum resonance needed for artificial universe creation. But your Harbinger weapon, it contained the seeds of such technology. Combined with our temporal mathematics, a solution might be possible. The chronometer hit 20 minutes. Elara made her decision. I'll bring your proposal to Earth's leaders. If you cease all harvesting operations immediately, the Time Seer pulsed. Supreme Extractor KZZ Locketh will never agree. The High Command believes harvesting is the only certain path to survival. Then help me convince them, Elara challenged. You've calculated the probabilities. Even if harvesting Earth gives you the resources you need, the collapse is coming faster than you predicted. You need a better solution as much as we do. A long pause followed, the massive consciousness considering. I will assist you. The Time Seer finally responded. But not like this. Before Elara could react, a quantum pulse emanated from the Time Seer, somehow penetrating her phase shift. She felt her consciousness expanding exponentially, her perception extending across probability itself. The Time Seer was sharing its understanding, its ability to see and calculate the complex mathematics of time and multiple realities. As the knowledge integrated with her already enhanced mind, Elara saw it all with perfect clarity. The plan that might save both species, the exact quantum equations needed to create the artificial universe, and the single, crucial component they still lacked. A quantum-entangled consciousness, she whispered as understanding dawned, to guide the collapse from inside and outside simultaneously. Yes, the Time Seer confirmed. One mind existing in two places at once, maintaining the delicate balance required for controlled implosion. That's why you connected with my mind, Elara realized. You were testing me to see if I could sustain the neural load. Your quantum touch consciousness is uniquely suited. The probability of success increases to 9.74% with your participation. The chronometer showed 15 minutes remaining in phase shift. Soon, she would become detectable to the Vrex drones patrolling nearby. I'll do it, Elara decided. But first, we need a ceasefire. No more harvesting. I cannot command the Supreme Extractor directly, but I can influence. The chamber suddenly illuminated with pulsing blue light as the Time Seer activated some form of ship-wide communication. Elara's translation implant interpreted fragments of the message. Complex mathematical proofs demonstrating the accelerated approach of the collapse and the potential of the new solution. It is done, the Time Seer informed her. KZZ resists, but the Council sees the logic. Harvesting operations will cease pending negotiation with human authorities. The chronometer hit 10 minutes. I need to return to my people. To explain. Yes, but before you go, you must understand what you are agreeing to, Elara Vex. The quantum entanglement required for this plan will permanently alter your consciousness. You will exist partially in this reality and partially in the artificial universe. If we succeed, you'll never fully return to human existence as you understand it. Elara thought of Earth, of the billions who would die in invade, of Admiral Zhou, Captain Meta, and all those fighting desperately for survival. Understand, she said firmly. Now tell me what I need to do. The Geneva War Room erupted into chaos when Elara materialized in the center of the holographic display. The phase shift deactivating as the chronosuit's power cells finally depleted. Stand down, Admiral Zhou shouted as security personnel raised their weapons. Commander Vex, report. Elara's eyes glowed with an unnatural blue light. a side effect of her enhanced quantum perception. When she spoke, her voice carried an otherworldly resonance. I've made contact with the Time Seer. The Vrex have agreed to a temporary cessation of hostilities. A stunned silence fell over the room. Just like that, General Chandra asked skeptically, "They're simply stopping their invasion because you asked nicely?" "Not because I asked," Elara replied. "Because their calculations were wrong. The collapse is accelerating. Harvesting Earth won't save them, or us, anymore." Dr. Liwei stepped forward, studying Elara with scientific curiosity. "You're changed," she observed. "The quantum entanglement has progressed." "Yes," Elara confirmed. "The Time Seer has shared its perceptive abilities. I can see probabilities, temporal vectors, and I can see a solution." Over the next hour, Elara explained the desperate plan. The creation of an artificial universe designed to attract and contain the entropy wave, saving the remaining multiverse at the cost of the constructed reality. The combined knowledge of human quantum technology and Vrex temporal mathematics made it theoretically possible, but only just. "And you be the bridge?" Joe asked, struggling to comprehend. "Your consciousness split between realities?" "My mind would exist simultaneously in our universe and inside the artificial construct," Elara confirmed. "I would guide the controlled collapse from both sides of the dimensional barrier." Captain Meta had been silent throughout the explanation, but now he spoke up. "The mortality rate of this plan is extremely high," Elara finished for him. "The Time Seer calculates a 97.3% probability that my consciousness will be destroyed in the process." "Absolutely not," Joe said firmly. "We'll find another way." "There is no other way, Admiral," Elara replied with certainty. "I've seen every probability branch. This is our only path with any chance of success." "Even if we agree to this insanity," Chandra interrupted, "how do we know the Vrex won't betray us the moment the technology is operational? They could still harvest what remains of Earth while we're focused on building this quantum construct. Because they need us as much as we need them," Dr. Liwei realized, examining the equations Elara had provided. "The Harbinger technology is essential to the plan, and only we understand its fundamental principles." Elara nodded. "We need to establish direct communication with the Vrex High Command, a formal alliance. An alliance with the creatures who were liquidating our cities less than 10 hours ago." Chandra scoffed. "Yes," Elara said simply, "because the alternative is extinction for both species." 3 days later, in the neutral ground of Earth's orbital space, humanity witnessed something unprecedented. The Defiance, now repaired enough to serve as Earth's diplomatic vessel, stationed itself 1 kilometer from the massive Vrex command ship. Between them floated a newly constructed quantum communication platform, designed to allow direct interaction between the leaders of both species. Elara stood on the Defiance's observation deck, beside Admiral Zhou and the newly formed Human Defense Council. Across the void, Supreme Extractor Kivalakit and the Vrex High Command prepared to make contact. "They're activating the quantum bridge," Dr. Liwei announced as the platform between the ships began to glow with ethereal light. The air shimmered, and suddenly the Vrex leadership appeared as if physically present on the Defiance. Quantum projections so perfect they seemed solid. Kivalakit towered over the human delegation, its chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the ship's lights. Compound eyes taking in every detail of the humans before it. "Supreme Extractor," Zhou greeted formally. "We accept your request for diplomatic exchange." The Vrex leader's mandibles clicked rhythmically as the translation system converted the sounds to human language. "The Time Seer has convinced the Council that cooperation offers the highest probability of survival. We acknowledge the necessity. It wasn't an apology for the invasion, but it was a recognition of changed circumstances." Elara stepped forward, her quantum-enhanced perception allowing her to see the complex emotional patterns rippling through the Vrex consciousness. Fear, desperation, and a grudging respect. "The combined project has been designated Operation Firebreak," she stated. "Construction of the primary quantum reactor must begin immediately." We estimate 17 days until the collapse reaches our universal boundary. Cassandra inner eyelids flicked in what the translation system interpreted as agreement. Our harvester ships will be repurposed for construction. The necessary materials will be provided willingly by Earth, Zhou interrupted. Not harvested. A tense moment passed as Cassandra considered this assertion of boundaries. Finally, the Supreme Extractor inclined its massive head. Acceptable under the circumstances. We will contribute our temporal manipulation technology and navigation systems. And the Time Seer? Elara asked, knowing its participation was essential. We'll work directly with you through quantum entanglement, Cassandra confirmed. Though the Council records its objection to entrusting such a critical role to a human consciousness. Noted, Zhou replied coldly. We have similar reservations about working with those who attempted to eradicate our species. Dr. Li Wei stepped forward, displaying a holographic schematic of the proposed quantum reactor. If we're finished establishing our mutual distrust, perhaps we could focus on saving both our species. And so began the most improbable alliance in human history. Former enemies working side by side, racing against the approaching wave of universal destruction. The massive Vrex harvesters, once instruments of Earth's destruction, were converted into construction platforms for the enormous quantum reactor being built in Earth's orbit. For 14 days, humans and Vrex labored together, each species bringing their unique knowledge to the project. Elara divided her time between the reactor construction and deep quantum communion with the Time Seer, her consciousness expanding further with each session as the entanglement between them strengthened. Your neural pathways are adapting to the quantum load, Dr. Li Wei observed during one of Elara's brief rest periods. But the physical strain is significant. Your human biology wasn't designed for this. Elara nodded, wincing at the persistent headache that now accompanied her enhanced perception. It's necessary. Without the entanglement, the artificial universe won't form correctly. And after, Li Wei asked quietly. If we succeed, Elara didn't answer immediately. The truth was that success would likely mean her consciousness would forever exist in a state of quantum flux, neither fully in this universe nor completely in the artificial construct. A half-existence at best. Let's focus on surviving first, she finally replied. On the 17th day, as the quantum reactor neared completion, the first tangible evidence of the collapse became visible even to normal human perception. Strange distortions appeared at the edges of the solar system, reality itself becoming unstable as the entropy wave approached. It's accelerating faster than predicted. The Time Seer's thoughts came urgently through Elara's quantum link. We have less than 24 hours remaining. In the control center of the orbital platform, human and Vrex scientists worked frantically to complete final calibrations. The quantum reactor, a massive ring structure surrounding a swirling vortex of contained energy, pulsed with increasing power as the activation sequence began. Artificial Universe Seed Program loaded, Dr. Li Wei announced. Temporal stabilizers online. Void containment at maximum capacity. A Vrex technician chittered. Reality anchors engaged. Admiral Zhou approached Elara as she prepared to enter the specialized chamber that would enhance her quantum entanglement to the necessary level. It's not too late to find another volunteer, he said quietly. Elara smiled sadly. Yes, it is. The entanglement process has already progressed too far. I'm the only one who can do this now. Zhou clasped her shoulder. Earth will remember your sacrifice, Commander. Just make sure there's an Earth left to remember, she replied. The entanglement chamber sealed around her, filling with a luminescent fluid that would amplify the quantum connection. As her physical senses dimmed, her quantum perception expanded exponentially. She could see the multiverse itself now. Countless realities stacked like pages in an infinite book, and at the edge, the approaching wave of oblivion. Through the quantum link, the Time Seer's consciousness merged further with hers. The artificial universe is forming. You must guide it now. Elara reached out with her mind, feeling the nascent reality taking shape within the quantum reactor. It was like holding a soap bubble, beautiful, fragile, and impossibly complex. As her consciousness partially transferred into the newborn universe, she experienced an impossible duality, existing in two realities simultaneously. From the artificial universe's perspective, she watched as it grew from nothing into a swirling cosmos of energy and potential. From her physical body in the entanglement chamber, she directed the quantum reactor's power to shape and strengthen the construct. Reality integrity at 60% and rising. Dr. Liwei's voice came distantly through the fluid. The entropy wave has reached Saturn's orbit. We must activate the quantum attractor now, the Time Seer urged, before the artificial universe fully stabilizes. It was the most dangerous part of the plan. They needed the artificial universe to be stable enough to draw in the entropy wave, but malleable enough to be collapsed in a controlled manner afterward. The timing had to be perfect. Initiating quantum attractor sequence, Elara announced, her voice resonating both in the physical chamber and throughout the artificial universe. The reactor's energy output surged as specialized fields reached out toward the approaching entropy wave. Through her quantum sight, Elara watched as the destruction noticed the bait, the rich, untapped energy of a fresh universe. The wave began to curve, drawn toward the artificial construct. "It's working," someone shouted. "The collapse is changing course." But as the entropy wave approached the quantum reactor, Elara felt the artificial universe begin to destabilize. The attractor fields were drawing in the destructive force too quickly before the construct was fully formed. Structural integrity failing. A Vrex technician reported urgently. "Collapse imminent. We must reinforce from within," the Time Seer communicated. "But the strain on your consciousness." "Do it," Elara commanded, bracing herself. The Time Seer channeled its full quantum computational power through their entangled connection. Elara screamed as her mind became the conduit for energies no human was meant to contain. Inside the artificial universe, she fought to maintain its coherence as the entropy wave began to tear into its outer boundaries. From both sides of reality, she held the construct together through sheer force of will, her consciousness stretching to its breaking point. "The entropy wave is fully diverted," Dr. Liwei reported, beginning controlled collapse sequence. This was the final stage, the deliberate destruction of the artificial universe in a way that would seal the breach in the multiverse, trapping the entropy wave inside as it imploded. From within the construct, Elara could feel reality compressing around her. The artificial universe, born just minutes ago, was dying by design. As it collapsed, she guided the process, ensuring the entropy wave remained contained. "Your consciousness must withdraw now," the Time Seer warned, "or you will be trapped in the implosion." But Elara could feel that something was wrong. The collapse wasn't proceeding correctly. There was a fluctuation in the quantum fields that threatened to destabilize the entire process. If she withdrew her consciousness, the carefully orchestrated implosion would fail, and the entropy wave would escape to continue its destruction of the multiverse. "I need to stay," she realized, "to complete the sequence." "The probability of survival is 0, the Time Seer calculated. "Some things are worth dying for," Elara replied. As the artificial universe compressed toward its final state, Elara poured the last of her consciousness into guiding the collapse. From outside, in the entanglement chamber, her physical body convulsed as neural pathways overloaded. "Her vital signs are critical," Dr. Liwei shouted. "We're losing her." But Elara was beyond hearing now. Her awareness focused entirely on the culmination of the plan. The artificial universe contracted to a single point of infinite density, taking with it the entropy wave that had threatened all reality. In the final microsecond before the complete collapse, as her consciousness began to fragment, Elara experienced a moment of perfect clarity. She saw the multiverse safe, at least for now. She saw Earth and the Vrex worlds continuing, perhaps even learning to coexist after facing extinction together. And then, darkness. 1 year later, Admiral Zhou stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Earth-Vrex Coalition vessel Firebreak. Through the viewport, he watched as construction continued on the massive quantum observatory that now orbited Earth, a joint project dedicated to monitoring the multiverse for signs of further instability. The Coalition Council is waiting, Admiral, his aide informed him. Zhou nodded, taking a final moment to gather his thoughts. 1 year since Operation Firebreak. 1 year since Commander Elara Vex had sacrificed herself to save reality itself. The alliance between humans and Vrex, born of desperate necessity, had evolved into something no one could have predicted, a genuine partnership. The Vrex, their harvesting program abandoned, had shared remarkable technologies that accelerated human development by decades. In return, humanity's innovative approach to quantum physics had given the Vrex new perspectives on their own ancient science. Together, they were stronger than either had been alone. Zhou made his way to the Coalition Council chamber, where Supreme Director Kizalakith, the Vrex had abandoned military titles in the new alliance, waited alongside the other council members. The memorial ceremony is prepared, Kizalakith announced as Zhou entered. Both human and Vrex observances will be honored. Thank you, Zhou replied, still finding it strange to work alongside beings who had once been Earth's greatest threat. Commander Vex would have appreciated the gesture. The ceremony was to mark the first anniversary of Operation Firebreak, honoring those lost in both the invasion and the desperate plan to save the multiverse. At its center would be the dedication of a quantum beacon named after Elara Vex, a device designed to send signals across multiple realities. As the council members filed out toward the memorial hall, Dr. Liwei hurried in, her expression urgent. Admiral, we've detected something, she said breathlessly. The quantum observatory picked up an anomalous signal 20 minutes ago. It's coming from the exact coordinates where the artificial universe collapsed. Zhou frowned. That's impossible. Nothing could have survived that implosion. That's what we thought, Liwei agreed. But this signal, it has Commander Vex quantum signature. The memorial hall fell silent as Zhou shared the news. For a year, they had believed Elara Vex was gone, her consciousness destroyed in the artificial universe's final collapse. Now, this impossible signal suggested otherwise. Supreme Director Kizalakith's compound eyes flickered with what humans had learned to recognize as intense interest. The Time Seer theorized that consciousness, once quantum entangled across realities, might not be bound by conventional physical laws. Are you saying she might be alive? Zhou demanded. Not alive in any way we understand, Kizalakith clarified, but perhaps echoing, a quantum ghost in the space between realities. Dr. Liwei activated a holographic display, showing the anomalous readings. The signal is weak but distinct. If we could amplify it using the quantum beacon, do it, Zhou ordered without hesitation. Hours later, on the memorial platform, the combined scientific teams of humans and Vrex made final adjustments to the quantum beacon. Originally designed to transmit signals across the multiverse, they had reconfigured it to receive, instead, to amplify and focus the faint quantum signature that might be all that remained of Elara Vex. Beacon active, Dr. Liwei announced as the massive device hummed to life. Targeting coordinates locked, the assembled crowd, humans and Vrex standing together, watched in tense silence as the beacon reached out across quantum reality. Searching for the echoed "T first," nothing happened. The holographic display showed only random quantum fluctuations, the background noise of reality itself. Then, slowly a pattern emerged. Coherent, intentional. It's a message, Dr. Liwei whispered. The quantum signal resolved into a voice, distorted and strange, but recognizably Elara's. The space between is vast, the voice said haltingly. I see everything, all possibilities, all timelines. Commander Vex, Zhou spoke into the receiver. Is that really you? A long pause followed, as if the response had to travel an impossible distance. Zhou, yes, no, I am, more and less now. The collapse created something new, a quantum consciousness, untethered. The scientists exchanged stunned glances. What Elara described should have been impossible. A mind existing without a physical body, sustained purely as a quantum pattern in the void left by the artificial universe's collapse. Can we bring you back? Zhou asked, though he suspected the answer. No, Elara's voice replied. I am where I need to be, watching. The collapse was only delayed, not stopped. It will return. Supreme Director Kizalakith stepped forward. How long do we have? Centuries, perhaps millennia. Time enough to prepare, to evolve. The implications were staggering. The entropy wave that had threatened to destroy all reality had been temporarily contained, but not permanently defeated. The multiverse had been granted a reprieve, not salvation. I will remain, Elara's voice continued, as guardian, as warning, between the worlds. We'll find a way to help you, Jo promised, unwilling to accept that she was forever lost to them. To bring you home, a sound came through the quantum link, something almost like laughter. I am home, Admiral, in all realities at once. And when the time comes, I will warn you again. The signal began to fade, the quantum pattern dispersing back into the background noise of reality. Wait, Jo called. Elara. Her voice came one last time, fainter but clear. Look to the stars, old friend. The future awaits us there. Together, you will be ready when the time comes. And then she was gone, or rather, returned to her impossible existence in the quantum void. Watching over the multiverse, she had sacrificed everything to save I. In the silence that followed, Supreme Director Kellokith turned to Admiral Jo. Your species continues to surprise us. We came to harvest your world out of desperation. Instead, you've given us hope. Jo nodded, looking out at the assembled representatives of both species. That's what humans do best. Hope against impossible odds. And the Vrex will contribute our perspective across time, Kellokith replied. Together, we will be prepared when the collapse returns. As the ceremony concluded, a new alliance was cemented. Not merely one of necessity, but of shared purpose. The Earth-Vrex coalition would expand outward to the stars, building a civilization capable of facing the ultimate threat when it eventually returned. And somewhere in the quantum void between realities, Elara Vex watched over them all, an echo of humanity preserving the future of the multiverse. 5 years after the quantum signal, the first joint Earth-Vrex deep space vessel prepared to depart the solar system. Named the Elara Vex, the massive exploration ship represented the pinnacle of combined human innovation and Vrex temporal technology. On its bridge, a mixed crew of both species worked in harmony. The children of a crisis that had nearly destroyed them both, now united in purpose. Captain Meta, once a man out of time, stood at the command station. As the ship's engines powered up for its maiden voyage, he addressed the crew. We venture into the unknown not as conquerors or harvesters, but as explorers. As guardians of a multiverse we now know is more fragile than we ever imagined. The Elara Vex broke orbit, its quantum drives creating a controlled tear in space-time, a technology that would have been impossible without the knowledge gained during Operation Firebreak. As the ship accelerated toward the distant stars, its sensors briefly detected a familiar quantum signature pulsing alongside them. For just a moment, on all communication channels, a single message appeared. Infinity awaits. I'll see you there. The Elara Vex vanished into the depths of space, carrying with it the hope of two species and the watchful echo of the woman who had saved them all. In the quantum void between realities, a consciousness that had once been Elara Vex continued its vigilant observation. The multiverse stretched before her like an endless library of possibilities, some bright with promise, others dark with potential threats. The collapse would return someday, but when it did, it would find a multiverse prepared, a coalition of species united across time and space, ready to face the ultimate challenge together. And at the center of it all, an echo of humanity would be waiting, guiding them toward a future even she couldn't fully predict. Not the end of everything, but a new beginning. The infinite horizon called, and across the stars, the children of Earth and Vrex answered.